Hello, BookTube. My name is Shawn, Breathes Books, and I'm here with Lindy of Lindy's Magpie Reads. And we are here to talk about, no, we're not going to talk about that prize. And if you've been watching our channels, you will have a good reason, you'll have a good sense of why we're not talking about that prize. We're going to focus this year on a prize that is not, that we're not ashamed to mention in polite company, and that is the Canadian Governor General's Literary Awards. Hey, Lindy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Nice to be here, Shawn.
Yeah, we're gonna focus our chat on a couple of the lists, but I think you're gonna cherry pick through some of the other stuff because you read everything. They might even have a list for what's on the back of cereal boxes because I know you read everything. But we're gonna start with the fiction. It's not a short list, is it? What is it we're talking about?
So with the Governor General, they come up with a list of five finalists. And then on November 13th, they're going to announce winners for all of these categories.
Yeah, that's isn't there another prize in the States that does something like that?
I
Same
think
kind of
the National Book Award does it that way
yeah.
as well.
So it's not your long list and short list. This is kind of like the short list, but it's finalists.
Yeah,
And how many books are on each of the lists?
five.
All right. So let's get started with fiction. Where shall we begin?
Let's start with the only book that I've read on
All
this
right.
list, which is, okay, it's the long title, The Memoirs of Miss Chief Eagle Testickle, a true and exact accounting of the history of, and then on the cover it says North America, and that's crossed out, and it says Turtle Island, and it's volume one. There are two volumes to this. So it's by Kent Monkman and Gisele Gordon. They have worked together in the past, but this is the first book, I think, for either of them. Kent Monkman is a internationally known Cree artist and filmmaker and performance artist. And Gisele Gordon also works in multimedia. So,
Yeah, isn't he the guy that does those fabulous paintings about residential schools and indigenous history? Yeah,
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 that's
incredible.
exactly right. Monkman's grandmother went to a residential school. He's from Manitoba. His family is from Manitoba. His style of painting is quite recognizable. It's sort of a takeoff of traditional European paintings like Delacroix, for example.
Sure.
I think I might be able to pop some paintings in so you get the idea of it. Now, I wish I had the physical book here to show you. I did not purchase it. It's $48 plus tax because it's full of paintings.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what these authors did was they used the paintings as sort of a storyboard. And I'm interested that they put this in the fiction category for the GGs because it's part fiction and part nonfiction. It's the true history, true events that have happened in Canada from an Indigenous point of view, but told as if it was a memoir of Kent Monkman's sort of alter ego that he uses in his paintings, and that person is Miss Chief Eagle Testickle. So this character, I think he came up with her in about 2002. She's a all gender supernatural being. And in this work of memoir fiction history, she travels through time and can shapeshift as well. But volume one starts with the creation of the world and goes up to Confederation, 1867, the moment of Confederation. And then volume two is from Confederation on to the present day in Canada. And I haven't read that volume yet, but I am really looking forward to it because this was so enjoyable. I listened to the audio, and it's read by Gail Morris, who is a Cree speaker, and there is a lot of Cree language in it. There's a extensive Cree glossary as well, but the audio edition has two parts to it. So there's the story straightforward. It takes about 6 hours. And then if you keep listening after the Cree vocabulary, there's the story with all of the notes because there are many end notes. And on the audio production, Gisele Gordon reads those notes, and they follow each time that something comes up, and then they say, this is where that came from, and then there's notes for it. And it's just so interesting. So the second part of the audio is 8 hours long, or more than 8 hours, I think. And I listened to both parts. I just loved it so much, so much.
And you had the book open in front of you so that you could look at the pictures as well.
No.
Okay.
There's a waiting list at the library for the book, and I was able to get the audio. However, I am going to be also reading the book once I get the library copy in my hands, to see it with the paintings. I have seen a lot of his work already, so I could sort of imagine which paintings would go with the different sections, but I think it would be really enjoyable to have, both.
I hate over hastily dismissed this book because of the title, but the more I listen to you, I mean, this is a fictional protagonist or narrator, but I just thought the word testicle. Why is the word testicle in the title? What, like, that automatically creates a sense of kind of spoofing something or being kind of, I don't know, campy, or not that I have anything against any of those, but I didn't take it seriously. And it sounds like it's actually a fairly serious work, but is it
It is.
in a kind of satirical or campy tone as well?
There, the campiness is there, in a subdued way.
Mm.
I've had the same reaction as you. Even though I do like Kent Monkman's film work, sometimes he's a little over the top for me. But this,
He got into trouble, didn't he, for a painting he did with Trudeau in it, and that was
yeah, yeah.
withdrawn, and nobody's ever been able to see it. I don't think.
Now, you know this about me as a reader, that I prefer not to read sex scenes in books. And there's a fair amount of sex in here that I was absolutely fine with, a lot of gay sex. It is
Right.
so joyous. There's this, it's kind of jubilant, and this character, Mischief, is somebody who
Oh, I just made the
avoids.
connection. Mischief. Okay. A
Yeah,
little bit
yeah.
slow on the uptake here, but I'm getting it.
And the word testicle is not spelled like the male organ. It's more about tickling. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, there's so many places I could go with that, and I'm just going to leave all that for the time being.
I think that you will really enjoy this, Shawn. There's
Hmm.
so much in here, that things that I never thought of before, like the fact that Europeans coming to uh, become fur traders, uh, a large proportion of them were gay men, because it was a way for them to escape the censure of their identity, really, in in Britain. And and so in the notes, for example, there will be the statistics from 1800 to, let's say, 1850. I don't have them in front of me. 200 men were charged in England for sodomy, and 50 of them were hanged. So it just gives you a feeling of, why these men are coming singly and, living here in the wilds at that time.
Kent Monkman is a part of the LGBTQ plus community, I think.
Yes, he is.
How about
He's
Gisele
cisgender.
Gordon?
Yeah, he's gay and
Cisgender?
he's cisgender.
Yeah.
But this alter ego is an all gender kind of person who is against violence. And so what she's trying to do is to help her people by spreading the word that we have a sacred agreement with the natural world, and we're here to look after it and to only take what we need. And she's trying to convince Europeans that this is the way to behave.
Very interesting. Well, darn you, Lindy. I had crossed that one off my list thinking, oh, I don't need to bother about that. Now it's back on, as if I don't have enough to read.
Yes, it's just it's so sexy, tongue in cheek, and yet it is confronting difficult truths. So in this time period, this is prior to residential schools, but there is mention of them because of mischief traveling through time. But she calls them children's work camps.
That's what they were, as much as
Yeah,
anything else.
yeah,
Certainly weren't schools.
yeah.
Wow. All right.
And and so the next book that I want to tell you about is also by an Indigenous author, and that is Jordan Abel and his first novel, Empty Spaces.
Yes.
So Jordan Abel is Nishka on his father's side and white on his mother's side, and he was raised by his mother. He's born in Vancouver, and I think he grew up in Barrie, Ontario, and now he lives in Edmonton. He's well known as a poet, and then his memoir, Nishka, just blew me away.
Yeah,
Loved.
Nishka was a transformative read for me too, so I bought Empty Spaces and just haven't gotten to it yet.
So yeah, so this is Nishka,
Yes.
and I do not have a copy of Empty Spaces yet. I tell you, this was what happened. I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I picked it up at the bookstore and opened it, and the text goes, it fills the entire space. There's no empty spaces in the text. You know what I mean? No paragraph breaks, no chapter breaks. Well, there might be chapter breaks, but it's very, wall to wall writing. And it reminds me of his poetry in that it's very cyclical. There's looping that happens, repetitive phrases. And the text for it, he's actually got it in here. In those images that he did, I don't know if you remember, he used his father's artwork.
Yes, yes.
And in these parts here, there's text from Last of the Mohicans, descriptions of landscape. Well, when I heard Abel talking about this particular novel shortly after it came out, he was saying that I created a novel without characters. The landscape is the protagonist. There's no dialogue. And I thought, wow, what is that? That's very different. Well, I think I told you, I picked it up at the bookstore, I read a bit, and I thought, I'm going to have to be in a certain kind of mood for this. But when I saw that it was on the GG list, I looked at it again. So you can get some of it, a preview online.
Sure.
And I read the first 2 pages, and I just felt it kind of wash over me. The sensation of being a sort of omnipresent, looking at cliffs, water, smelling the scent of roses. That phrase keeps coming up. Sort of feeling landscape there. And so I think that's what he's doing, is giving landscape its own uh, selfhood, I guess. I think there are characters further on in as you go further, but you just kind of see them maybe from the land's point of view, human and animal characters. So I am really intrigued, really intrigued. I think this is one that I really want to hear in audio because when there's wall to wall text, I find it's kind of a barrier to me. But if I listen to somebody reading that, it's more like stream of consciousness where you can just let it come in. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to listen to it.
And so it includes a lot of excerpts from that, The Last of the Mohicans. Is that Fenimore Cooper?
Yes.
Is there anything else in it? Does he write any of it, or is it just a kind of a rearrangement or
Well, I think he's going to be telling a story with it, so he's got to do something different. Well, does he have to? I don't know. I haven't read it, so I don't
there
know.
there is a novel, I think the author's American. I believe his surname is Komata. And you might know about this. He wrote a book called, I think it's called The Nature Book, and it is entirely composed of excerpts from other fictional works. And it's about setting, it's about nature, and he puts it together so that you can't tell where one excerpt stops and the other starts, but not one word of it is his own. And so I'm wondering if this might be something like that.
Ah, well,
Well, you'll have to tell us later.
yeah, yeah. But I'm glad that it's on this list because this is making me excited about it and wanting to pick it up.
Great.
And then the third book I want to tell you about also has an Indigenous component, and the
It's
title is
fantastic.
Naniki, and it's by Oonya Kempadoo. I didn't know anything about this when I saw it
No.
on the list. Kempadoo is a British born novelist, and she's of Guyanese descent, and she lives in Montreal. And she also does video, multimedia kind of stuff. And so I learned that this book is actually part of an eco-social multimedia project that she's doing. And the image on the cover is from video footage from that project.
Mm.
She has written other novels prior to this, at least three other novels, I think, but she was not on my radar. This book is described as a Caribbean futurist novel, and there's two main protagonists, and they're both kind of supernatural entities. There's a water spirit and an air spirit, and the water spirit is Taino, was a Caribbean indigenous group, and the air spirit is African. And I think the main setting from what I read is in 2050, so it's in the future, but they go backwards in time all the way back to like 12,000 years ago or something, and forward in time to the year 3000. So that's definitely looking at climate and people. And yeah, that's about all I know of it. I'm intrigued. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a Lindy book. Doesn't sound like a Shawn book at all.
and and that one's published by Dundurn Press in Canada. Now this next book is published by Knopf, which is a much larger press, and it's Code Noir by Canisia Lubrin.
Yeah, this is one that I have on my shelf and haven't gotten to yet.
So she is very well known as a poet. Um, her first collection, Voodoo Hypothesis, won lots of recognition, and The Disgraphist also. That was her second collection. But what I found is it was like I couldn't find my way in to her poetry. I felt like I need a key. I don't have the key. And sometimes when that happens, if I listen to the poet read her own work, then, I get more understanding of it. And I had that experience with this novel. Uh, I read 40% of it and ended up not finishing it. And I thought, I need to hear her talk about this. And she's going to be at the Vancouver Writers Festival.
Oh,
However, her event is at 8:30 at night. And that's just too late for me. I can't stay up that late. But anyway, I can watch interviews online, where she's talking about this book. So
I remember that there's something quite, would you say experimental about the way she structured it? It's several different voices. Um, and it's about the Black experience in Canada or North America.
I would say it's Pan-African because the Code Noir of the title, that was
That's right.
a long list of edicts that the King of France, this was Louis the 14th, issued in the 1500s about slavery. And so in Code Noir, each each piece of fiction is in relation to one of those edicts. And
That's
there's
right.
also a work of art that goes with it. So the edict isn't just in plain text on the facing page, it's incorporated into art. The artist is Farquharson Dyson. And it really does add a lot, I found. But the short pieces of fiction, they're almost like fragments, but they do interconnect. But the thing is, they're not all in the same literary style. So there's contemporary realism, there's fantasy, there's dystopia, uh, there's historical bits, and I think if I would have had a little more patience, I would have seen how they connected together. Because as I said, I stopped at 40%. I'm definitely going to pick it up again. And
Well, I know your eyes usually light up at the mere mention of the word fragment.
I know. And I did find that the writing was drawing me in. She's got she's a wordsmith. She uses language so creatively that part is really appealing. And as you've noticed, the books on this list so far have all, there's been something about the art or the design on the page.
Yeah, very much so.
This one incorporates art. Monkman's has, paintings in it, and Naniki has got the video element, although that's separate from the book itself. And Jordan Abel's, just the way that it's on the page is kind of, like there's something about the design aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, I think, with these four novels so far. And so the final book is a collection of short stories. It's by Paola Ferrante, and it's called Her Body Among Animals. Now, this one is the most straightforward. The short stories do have kind of magical elements to them. They're kind of set in contemporary realist settings, but with a bit of fantastical incorporated. And I read three of them because they were available as a preview online. So there's a total of 11 short stories. And while I normally am really attracted to debuts, this is a debut because I like something fresh and new. I found that each story kind of reminded me of some other writer's style. And
Not
so
not Elena Ferrante's.
no, no. Uh, like, for example, there's a story called When Foxes Die Electric. And it is about a sex bot. And it reminded me so much of the book Annie Bot by Sierra Greer, just in a short version. So, I don't think these are bad stories, definitely not. But I was a little disappointed with uh, the three that I read. I would put them in the 4-star range as opposed to 5-star.
Little derivative.
So yeah, if you read Lesser Known Monsters of the 21st Century by Kim Fu, you would have an idea of the style of these. But I liked Kim Fu's better. Yeah.
Ah, well, it sounds like a pretty strong and interesting and extremely varied list.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I look forward to reporting in after I've read more of these.
I'm looking forward to that too. And I don't think I'm going to have a time to get to any of them before the winner's announced, but the several of them I hope to get to shortly thereafter. All right, so that was the fiction list. What's going on with the nonfiction list?
Wow. I have only read one on the nonfiction list as well, and that is the book Becoming a Matriarch by Helen Knott. Once again,
Ah,
we've got an Indigenous author.
yes. And I have it. I went to the book launch and haven't read it yet.
I also read her earlier
Mhm.
memoir, In My Own Moccasins.
Moccasins, yeah.
Yeah. And I recommend both, though Helen Knott has mixed Indigenous ancestry. She's of Daneza, Nehiyah, Métis, and European descent.
Right.
And she's from British Columbia. I think she now lives in Alberta. Not sure about that. She's got an amazing story about coming through hardship.
The opening few lines or paragraphs of the first one, In My Own Moccasins, was incredibly powerful. I just featured it on a book haul video recently, so it's still fresh in my mind.
Yeah, yeah. Now, the next book I want to say on the nonfiction list, I haven't read yet. It's Danny Ramadan's Crooked Teeth. I remember you talking about it on your channel.
Well, I
In a
had
book
him on
haul,
as a
maybe.
mystery guest. Oh, no, well, maybe
Ah,
that, but no, not that because I just got my copy. But he was a mystery guest, and we talked. It was on the occasion of that memoir coming out. So I am so pumped to read it. I sent him a email of congratulations when I saw that his name was on that this book was on the list. Yeah, how exciting for him.
well, yes. So I bought the book right after he was on your channel because I was so excited about it. I didn't want to
Yeah.
wait for a library copy. But this happens often to me. Then it just sits on my shelf. So now, this is the
Yeah, I
extra
can't
push.
tell you how many times I order something from abroad because it's not available in North America, and I don't get to it until long after it's available in North America much more affordably.
I know, bookish problems, right?
Yeah, it's this. Woe is us. And
These
that's about
others,
his life as a queer Syrian activist and writer and refugee. Yeah,
yeah,
fascinating story.
yeah. I'm excited all over again now
Me
to
too.
get to it.
Yeah.
So that's two memoirs that are on the nonfiction list. And
Mhm.
I know memoirs are big. Lots of readers enjoy memoirs. So I think this is going to be something that makes readers happy to see this
Yeah.
on the list.
Yes.
And then Winipek by Niigaan Sinclair.
Yeah.
Here we have another Indigenous author. I am going to
Absolutely.
be hearing him at Vancouver Writers Fest.
And isn't his father Murray going to be at the same reading?
No, only because Murray is in hospital now. He's
Yeah, he's
not
not.
doing well. Yeah.
Right.
So Canadians would know his name from the National Truth and Reconciliation
Absolutely. I think he should be
Commission.
considered one of the fathers of Confederation. Absolutely.
So Niigaan's Sinclair is he's in Winipeg, as you can probably guess from the title of this book, and it's a collection of his articles that he wrote for the Winnipeg Free Press. I've read a sample, and I'm keen to read more. There are lots of photographs and maps also included in the text.
And so they are about his city, Winnipeg.
Yes. And about the indigenous
Indigenous
presence
history
there.
and all that presence in history. Yeah. Fascinating.
So, for example, one of the columns that I did read that's included in this book talks about how Winnipeg made headlines as being the most racist city in Canada. And in this article, he wrote about how Winnipeg is just an example of racism that's present across Canada. And that because there is a very large percentage of the population that's Indigenous in Winnipeg, you just see it more.
Yeah. Saskatoon would be a close runner-up, I would imagine.
Yet again, a book that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
Now, the other two books, there's one, The Walls Have Eyes by Petra Molnar, and I knew nothing about this one.
And when I read the subtitle for this one, I can't make head nor hair of how those two things fit together. So it's probably breaking new ground in making the connections it does between migration and AI.
Yeah, Surviving Migration in the Age of Artificial Intelligence.
Yeah, I can't imagine how those two connect, but that's why there's a new book about it, so that I can find out all about it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm actually really interested in artificial intelligence and how it affects individuals in our lives. So this is right up my alley. And then there's a CBC Massey lecture in printed form. That's the fifth book on this list. It's The Age of Insecurity, Coming Together as Things Fall Apart, and it's by Astra Taylor. So I don't know how I just missed this entirely. Were you familiar with her or her work?
No, I was just going to say, who is Astra Taylor, Lindy?
Got more to find out, but again, the topic is enough to make me very, very interested.
And the Massey lecture is this, it's been going on for 50 years, I think, and it's an annual lecture named after one of our previous Governor Generals from back in the day. And it's broadcast on CBC, and it's about some kind of Canadian cultural topic, usually. So this is the most recent one, or maybe last year's or whatever. And yeah, Astra Taylor is an unknown name to me, but
And likewise. So, yeah, I find this list very exciting because of that. You know, new to me are books that I know of and already know that I want to read. So, quite happy about this. And I was also interested in who the jury was. So, for the GGs, they call the jury peer assessment.
Peer Assessment Committee, that has to be the most corporate sounding, ugly name. Just call them jurors, for God's sakes.
Okay, so on the nonfiction uh, peer assessment committee, there's Jordan Abel.
Yeah. He's
We already talked
nominated
about
on the
him.
other list.
Yeah. Robin Maynard. Are you familiar with her?
Yes.
She's
Isn't she a
Afro-Canadian.
Black writer
She
and
focuses
activist?
on race violence, gender-based
Yes.
violence. She did a co-authored book with Leanne Bedos Simpson. And then the third person is Mary Soderstrom.
That name is familiar, but I can't think of why.
She has been writing in Canada for a long time, lots of different nonfiction. I think she's written novels as well,
Okay.
but she's written about green spaces in cities and walkable cities, and also
Okay.
geopolitical relationships between neighboring countries, uh, climate change, human migration. So lots of different topics to do with social and cultural uh, aspects of our
Hmm.
lives. Yeah.
Did you want to talk about who was on the one for fiction?
Yes. Who was on it?
I have it open from the ggbooks.ca. Chris Eaton, Francesca Equiazzi, and Jen Ferguson.
Right. So Francesca Equiasi wrote Butter Honey Pig Bread,
Absolutely.
and Jen Ferguson has written, I think, three teen novels so far that have uh, received award recognition. She's a Métis writer.
Oh,
And Chris Eaton is the only one on this list that I wasn't familiar with. Uh, I think he's a musician as well as having written novels from the Maritimes. Does that?
oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not finding anything about him on a quick look, but he must be somebody to be on this, to be part of the peer assessment committee.
Yeah. Okay. So are you planning to pick up any of the books that are on the nonfiction list aside from Danny Ramadan's memoir?
Yes, but in the fullness of time, I am probably can't add anything to my list, my reading list for the rest of 2024. I'm booked up solid. But I have Code Noir by Canisia Lubrin. I want to read it. Dying to Get to Empty Spaces by Jordan Abel. You have gotten me interested, darn you, in Mischief Eagle Testickle. So those are the ones I want to read in the fullness of time from the fiction list, and I am planning to read both of Helen Knott's memoirs and interview her. When, I don't know, and probably the one I will pick up the soonest is Crooked Teeth. Those are the ones that are interest to me. Which ones are you going to pick up first?
First, Crooked Teeth, definitely. Yeah.
And if you're picking that up first, today is Wednesday. You'll probably be telling us about it in your Friday reads, knowing you.
Well, I've got some other books on the go as well, kind of like you.
Yeah,
I've got
you always do.
several going concurrently. So, um, but looking at some of the other categories in the GGs got me reading other things. So, one of them that I picked up yesterday, as soon as this list was announced, is a new book by Miriam Mal, who's a Quebecois. Well, actually, she's from France, but she lives in Quebec now. And it's a graphic novel, and it's in the category of translation.
Okay.
So let's have a look at those. Her new one is called So Long, Sad Love. And I stayed up late reading it because I started it too close to bedtime. I got more than halfway through until I thought, no, I need to be fresh for this video with Shawn. I'm going to get some sleep.
So it obviously was holding your interest, to put it mildly.
Yeah, yeah. That it's realistic fiction, possibly auto fiction. Actually, that I don't know, about a woman who is in a relationship that she thinks is going well until she hears from another woman something that troubles her about this man that she's with.
Okay.
So then what does she do about it? Yeah. And that's right at the very beginning of the book. And she's got a really expressive style, and it's in full color. I like her color use as well, and yeah, I'm really happy that I wouldn't have even known that she had this new translation available. And then another author that I have loved in the past is Marie-Claire Blais. And
Okay.
it surprised me to see her on this list because she died in 2021. She was in her
Oh,
80s, but she has been publishing for a long time. The first novel of hers that I read was Nights in the Underground, which is a lesbian novel, I think is set in the 50s or 60s in Montreal. And I have enjoyed other books that I've read of hers since then. But the most recent one, the English title, I think, is Songs for Angel. And I was so excited about it, purchased it, and then I didn't like it when I was reading it. I didn't finish it. Uh, yeah.
yeah. There was one that These Festive Nights. Do you know that one? I think that's one I tried and I didn't get very far into it, but I can't remember much about it. Just when I heard her name, I thought, oh, I think I tried one of hers. Anyway, so
So,
this book was published posthumously.
well, the translation was
The
possible.
translation, that's right.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
it is about a trans man who
Oh,
is near death. And he's
huh.
looking back on his life, also dealing with a nurse who insists on using female pronouns with him. But from the description that I read, it sounds like there are pivotal moments in queer history that are covered in the novel, and that does really intrigue me. So I'm going to give her another try.
Yeah, well, I won't be waiting to hear how you make out with that book because it sure sounds interesting.
Yeah. I'll just mention that on the Young People's Literature illustrated books, out of the five, I've read three of them and recommend all of them. One of them I happen to have out right now from the library, Skating Wild on an Inland Sea. It's by Jean Penzual and Todd Stewart, who have both won awards separately for their picture books. But
Hmm.
it is about skating on Lake Superior. The illustrations are so evocative of the place. And it's written in rhyme, and you just get this feeling that
Nice.
is fairly unique. There are not many people who have the opportunity to go out skating on a frozen lake. And I was fortunate enough to have had that opportunity because our farm was right on a lake. And I think there was only twice during the time that I was growing up that it froze without snow on it. We could shovel snow and skate, but when it freezes and the whole lake is just ice and you can go everywhere, it is heaven. It's there's just nothing like it. And this book really captures that. So I love that. Just love it.
Hmm. That's
And
great.
Sydney Smith is uh, an author, illustrator. He's illustrated books for other people, but the ones that he does of his own writing are particularly poignant. And this one is called um, Do You Remember? And it's so it's so poignant. It's a story of very simply told. You see a mother and son, a little boy, moving from the farm to the city, and the reason why they move is not immediately obvious, but uh, it's the kind of book that you can share with a child who's dealing with grief of losing somebody or the grief of leaving a place and having to move somewhere else,
Yeah.
and uh, feeling the comfort of knowing that you're not alone in missing that person, missing that place. So you see the connection between the boy and his mother with the repeated, do you remember this? Do you remember that? And they share that, and it's just so cozy and positive about the future, that we're going to be okay. And yeah, highly recommend that book.
That one
And
sounds.
the third book that's in this list is The Gulf by Adam D'Souza.
Mhm.
And this one is for older readers. So this category in the GG's illustrated text includes picture books and graphic novels. And this one is more for teens and adults, really. So I was actually surprised to see it on this list because I think of it more as an adult book. But it's set in, I think it's the 80s or 90s. And it's a high school group of kids, but one in particular who is resisting becoming an adult. And the whole thing about the adult world being so scary. And she wants to go off to an island off the coast of Vancouver and go to a commune there. And so this is her plan. And again, so well done, dealing with those kinds of feelings.
It's very relatable to me. Yeah, not wanting to grow up.
Yeah. So those are just some of the other books that are on this list. I'm excited. I'm excited to tell you about those, but I am going to be looking into more of the other books on these other categories as well.
Because we haven't touched poetry or drama. I think we've touched all the other lists, right?
There's a category for young people's literature text.
Mm.
And once again, this covers quite a broad age range. So elementary school, junior high, even into high school for the older teen books. But
Very good.
until I read some of them. Oh, actually, I did read one and I thought it was awful, so I'm not going to talk
That's very diplomatic of you.
about it.
Great. Well, it's pretty there's a lot of reading here for anyone who cares to dip into all these lists for the Governor General's Literary Awards for 2024.
Indeed.
And when is the winner announced?
It's the winners are going to be announced on November 13th. So that's about a month from now.
So let's see. Will Lindy read all of these books in time? I'm willing to bet on it.
No, I will get some of them read. And what I do is I just talk about books on my channel as I finish them. So we'll
Well,
see.
happy reading.
Thanks. And I mean, I know you said it's going to be a while before you get to any of these, but happy reading to you too, Shawn. And thank you so
Absolutely.
much for,
This is our new annual tradition.
yeah,
The Governor General's Awards are where it's at.
that's right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.